welcome everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Adam from the N+1 podcast and Miller's Custom Guitars. Today I am joined by a really cool guest. Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I just totally blanked on your name. We've been talking. Pillip Carter, right?
Yep.
I'm so stupid. Today I'm joined by a really awesome guest, Pillip Carter, who I just had a total brain fart and blanked on his name like an idiot. Today I'm joined by a really cool guest, Pillip Carter. And Phillip and I we kind of started to interact a little bit. We're both members of the 60 Cycle Hum Facebook group. And we kind of bumped into each other through there. If you're a guitar player, 60 Cycle Hum, it's a cool YouTube channel, and they have a really cool Facebook group, and it's mostly just guitar players being silly, right? Mm-hmm. It's not really even about the YouTube channel. It's just a place to be a guitar player and kind of make fun of ugly guitars and like share stuff you've seen on the internet. It's kind of a cool group, right? And actually, that's the group I kind of want to model my Facebook group around for the N+1 podcast. I just want it to be a place where people can go and just like talk about stuff. But I kind of got, bumped into you a little bit because I started to stitch some of your TikToks. He's got a great TikTok channel. You can check that out.
I need to get back on that. Yeah. I've been off that train for a minute.
Every time I see one of your TikToks, I think it's awesome. But the great thing is he's got his own podcast, which is the 40 Watt Podcast. And when I started to podcast, I would hit him up and I would say, "Hey man, I've got a question about this. Would you mind answering a question?" And he would say, "Oh yeah, man. Hey, I do it like this. Not that I'm the expert, of course.
Nope, but I'm definitely not.
But I do it like this." It was super helpful to me, so I would say thank you very much. It really kind of provided me a roadmap. I was listening to podcasts about podcasts. You can do a podcast like this and that. And then some of the things I heard on that was like, do people really do it like that? And he goes, no, I've never done that, And there was a couple people I was messaging. So I would say, first of all, thank you so much. You were a huge help. But then the thing I said was, hey, just so you know, as a podcaster, now that we've talked about podcasting, I'm contractually obligated to ask you to be on the podcast. And you said, of course, I'll be on the podcast. And here we are today. We're coming back, and this is the first, the second guitar adjacent episode. But I didn't want to just talk about guitars. And you've got some amazing guitars in the background. I can see them. You've got a mandolin.
Yeah,
you've got a two-rock
guitars
back there.
I do have a two-rock,
which is amazing. But
it's what I call an end game amplifier. There's not better. There's just different at that point.
Yeah, like why even get more amps?
I got really lucky to get that one at a ridiculous price that I had to move some things to get it just before everything started to spike in price, before everything started to go up. Yeah, I got really lucky.
So I've been listening to some of your episodes of your podcast, and I was like, well, what do we talk about with Phil? And every single episode of your podcast that I listened to, you mentioned the blues. I was like, yeah, man, this guy loves the blues. And I love blues. And I said, hey, why don't we talk about the blues? I love the blues. And I mentioned this in our text message. And I said, that would be like the music that I would choose to play. Like if I could just like be in any band, like I would choose to be in a blues band that played nothing but blues. And I was in a band with some buddies, and they were like, yeah, we can play the blues. And they would play like a song of the blues, and then they would move on. Like, yeah, we played the blues. And it's
I love when everybody was like, oh, you play the blues. Do you know the Skinner song, Ode to what is, I can't remember the title right now. I'm not a big Skinner aficionado, but it's like, what they think is blues music isn't. Mm-hmm. Ballad of Curtis Lowe. They're always like, sorry, I actually had to look it up. Everybody's like, oh, can you play the Ballad of Curtis Lowe? That's not a blues song, y'all. That's a rock and roll song about a guy who played the blues. It's like, it's really funny when you talk to other people about blues who aren't steeped in it. Yeah. And I'm not a hardcore like blues I want to avoid the term Nazi because of the connotations, especially lately. But
Purist,
I'm
maybe?
not like this. I'm not a purist. I'm not an authoritarian where I'm like, oh, if it is not this, it's not the blues. But there is a point where you're listening to it and like, you know what? That is very blues informed, and that is very blues inspired. That's not blues anymore.
Right.
And I've run into in my life a lot of blues purists who are like, oh, well, if you claim to be a blues player, you should only play the blues. I'm like, Robert Johnson played polka. Like, he literally played show tunes.
Mm-hmm.
He played whatever people wanted to hear. You going to go back and tell Robert Johnson he wasn't the blues?
Right.
I mean, all right, you do you, but
right. I'm going to pause for just a second. I'm going to pause for just a second because at least on my end, your camera is frozen. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that.
No, it is frozen. Yeah, let me see if I can fix that.
Now that we're done with our technical difficulties, let's just get into it. In your opinion, like, what is the blues? Like, that's a little esoteric, right? But
yeah.
What is the blues?
So
I know it goes way back, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to get into what is the blues. And some people immediately jump to, oh, well, it's a 12-bar progression that involves beginning on the 1 chord, which is a dominant 7, then moving to the 4 chord in the 5th and 6th bars, then moving back to the 1 chord for the 7th and 8th bar, and then a turnaround. It's so bad. Some people think that is what defines blues. You see a lot of jazz guys who say play a blues, and then they have, this is it. This is what the blues is, and this is nothing else. And it's like, not dogging on jazz guys, because I love jazz. I love playing jazz. I'm not a good jazz player. I will always be a blues player who plays jazz and never a jazz guitarist. I know that. I'm accepting of that. But, and some people get even more esoteric with it, and they're like, oh, the blues is a feeling, man. It's like this. It is. It's a vibe. It's an energy, but it's really all of that. There is a vocabulary. There is a style to the music, but that style can be very different. You look at a tune like Red Hot, and you look at a tune like Dust My Broom, and then you look at a tune like trying to think of another just blues ballad, and they're all blues, but the style varies. Sometimes it's 12 bars, sometimes it's 16 bars, sometimes it's 13 bars. There are a couple blues artists that they'd add an extra bar of the 1 there as a 9th bar before going to the turnaround. And there's a lot of that it is, but it's a very much about, there's a style, there's a vocabulary, there's a context, usually lyrical, but usually also thematic in the blues. We can always talk about, there's a, it's all about loss and sadness, and it's why it's called the blues. Yeah, it's about that, but it's also about sex, and it's about religion, and it's about there's lots of innuendo, and there's lots of there's just a whole lot to it. So it's one of those things where there's a quote by Supreme Court Justice James Potter, I think, where it said, I'm going to paraphrase. He said, I'm not sure that I could possibly define it within those terms that we're talking about, but I know it when I see it. Sure. James Potter was talking about hardcore pornography, but I use that same quote about the blues. I know it when I hear it. And that's because I've spent so much of my time steeped in it. I'm from, for listeners, those that know, I'm from Clarksdale, Mississippi. My hometown is the hometown too. Ike Turner, Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, Robert Johnson lived there. For those that don't know, Christone Kingfish Ingram, he's from Clarksdale as well. I grew up playing guitar with him, and he actually played bass for me when he was like 12. Nice. I can't afford to sit on stage with him anymore. he's blown up and he's amazing. Sure. But yeah, it's a town that's steeped in blues history, so I've been around it my whole life, and so I know it when I hear it. And so I go to blues festivals, and there's a lot of R&B in blues, and there's a lot of soul music that is blues, but not the other way around. So when you say what is it, it's really difficult to define sometimes, and people try to put it in this tiny little box of what it is, right? And you can't.
Yeah, I feel like, like you said, some people say, blues is, it's got to be sad or whatever. But I feel like it's not so much. I've definitely heard happy blues. I feel like it's more important that blues is songs with emotion.
Yeah.
Right? Like either happy, sad, horny, sexy, whatever.
Yeah.
Like the one of the core components about blues is that, they're songs with emotion. They're songs that are telling a story with some ache, whether a good ache or a bad ache, some pain. There's emotion that are at the root of the song.
Right.
I think that's really important. And then I wanted to move on to the next question, which is, what was your gateway drug into the blues? And I would say through this whole discussion, we're going to be talking about both like listening to the blues, right? Because we all have our blues that we listen to, but also playing the blues. So you can weave that in. But what was your gateway drug into the blues? Because, and I'll just admit to our listeners and viewers, blues is maybe not the easiest thing to just delve into. Just admit it. Pop music is way easier to listen to.
Yeah,
it's poppy for a reason, right?
Yeah,
and blues it's a little bit harder to catch on to. But I feel when it catches you, it catches you.
It took me years to be able to listen to Robert Johnson and really appreciate what was going on in that music. Because especially those early blues recordings are very, very hard to listen to because the technique wasn't great. They didn't have access to the best studios. They're not pitch perfect performances,
No.
which they're not. They shouldn't be. To me, if it's pitch perfect, it's not blues anymore. It's something else.
Right.
And there are a lot of great singers out there who have sang blues or great players who have played blues, but I wouldn't call them blues artists. Christina Aguilera had a track on Back to Basics. It is a hardcore blues tune, and she sang it with some authenticity. I would never call Christina Aguilera a blues singer. You know what I mean?
No.
Does this make sense?
No.
For me, getting into the blues, being from Clarksdale, there was always like this backdrop of the blues, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure, of course.
So, and especially because I'm Lebanese, so growing up in the Mississippi Delta, Lebanese culture is because, and just to be real, I'm going to talk pretty real about this.
Be real, buddy.
Yeah,
be real.
There's the racial divide, and there's especially in the Mississippi Delta, it's an extremely poor region. The African American population is the poorest, and it's a major divide between the whites that have and the blacks that don't, and that's where I see a lot of division. That's where the blues was born out of. Let's be honest. And so, as a Lebanese American living in Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta, I always felt like a little bit of a fence walker. Like I wasn't white, but I'm not black. I'm this weird thing that sits in the middle a little bit. And so culturally, I grew up working in liquor stores and grocery stores, stocking shelves in the liquor store. I couldn't sell it till I was 21. Then I did that. But, because my uncle was a Lebanese grocer who owned a grocery store and a liquor store across the street from each other. And grew up on the wrong side of town, quote unquote. It's a stupid quote, but that's what people know. They'll know it. And so blues was always that backdrop. But at the same time, I never got into it. Like I never got really understood it until I started playing guitar. And so I took up guitar late in life. I took up guitar when I was 18. I started out playing in church, just like a lot of people did. I played acoustic guitar for church praise bands and worship services. And then I moved away. And I moved to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is just outside of Nashville. And I was studying recording industry management. And that was when, that's when some of the things I had heard before, I started to understand. Because I had people I met find out where I was from and tell me more about the cultural impact of the town I lived in than I knew about. Mm-hmm. And so when I moved back home, that's when I found every blues guy I could to play with, every blues guy I could to gig with, every person that I could find who would let me sit in, play gigs for free. I did a lot of it because I wanted to learn and immerse myself in that music. And I learned a lot of cool things, played a lot of stuff that maybe not everyone would call blues, but they were sung by bluesmen in a blues style. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, I played with guys who went by names like Big T, Razor Blade, Pocket Knife, yeah, Dr. Mike.
Okay.
It's you don't get bluesier and more authentic than where I came from, and so that
Sure.
was where I came from. But what really had to happen is I had to hear it in a context that I really could understand, which for me, that was Johnny Lang when he appeared on Disney. Like he had a Disney special at one point,
Okay.
and I heard the blues in a way that I had not experienced personally. And then he talked about B.B. King, and he talked about all these other blues greats, and that's where I went, oh. And then there was also a moment that coincided with it where, just like everybody who's ever picked up a Strat, so literally I fell asleep on the couch one night in the living room at my family home. I was home from Tennessee, and I fell asleep on the couch watching TV. I was on public broadcasting. I was probably watching Austin City Limits, probably. I don't know. I don't know what I fell asleep watching, but I know that about 3 a.m, TV still on, I woke up and they were re-airing the second appearance of Stevie Ray Vaughan on Austin City Limits. That coupled with the experience I'd had with Johnny Lang before, with the things people had told me about blues before, and seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan and hearing the songs that he was doing that, Albert King had done before him. And then I got into that, and that was the fire. That was it. All the pieces came together, and I started to really, really understand. And so I listened to Steve, got really into Stevie for about a year. From Stevie, I discovered Albert King, Freddie King, got really deep into B.B. King, the three Kings, as it were. And I got so steeped in it and learning more about the history and the culture and the impact and the music that there was no turning back at that point. And so it took multiple approaches. Like you said, at first, listen, blues is not easy to get into for some people. And so it took me being hit from a bunch of different angles for all of the tumblers to fall into place to open that door for me.
Yeah. I remember for me, there was a time when I was a kid and, my dad was like, yeah, Adam, you got to listen to this. And he put on, Texas Flood, when you're a kid, there's part of you that's like, that wants to be impressed by the things your dad thinks are cool. And there's parts of you that thinks your dad is an old doofus, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And this was the part. This was the time where I was like, "Whoa, that's cool!" Right? And then I started to learn guitar, and then he put it on again, or maybe put on a video or something like check this out. Now that you're learning guitar, now that you know what's going on around the guitar neck, like now watch this. Now watch this guitar guy, and I my brain couldn't comprehend what was happening. Like, like that feeling that we all feel when we watch Stevie Ray, like, okay, it's time to quit now. What is happening? Like, how does somebody do that? But I remember I didn't really fall in love with the blues. I didn't fall in love. I appreciated Stevie Ray Vaughan, and that, Texas Flood is like all time, right? For blues, and just an all time album.
It absolutely is.
It's just a killer album, every song's a banger, but, I didn't really fall in love with the blues until I was in was it college? I think I was in college in like a music appreciation class or something like that. And we had to catch 4 concerts a year, maybe like jazz or blues concerts a year, right? I think it might've been a jazz appreciation class or something. I think it was a jazz appreciation class in college, and we had to catch 4 jazz or blues concerts a year as part of our credit. It was getting towards the end of the year, and I needed one more, and so me and my dad drove down to Rudy's Blues Club in Merced, which unfortunately that blues club is no longer there, which is a shame because that place was awesome. And it was just like, it was the only one. There was a couple. There was like a week left of this class, and it was the only blues concert, the blues gig we could find. And we drove down to this club and caught this guy playing blues. And we drove there. Gig started at 9, and Merced is like, geez, it's like a 2-hour drive for us.
Wow.
In Modesto, which is where we lived, and we don't live there anymore. But 2-hour drive to Merced, and walked in at 9, and we watched him play 4 songs and then we left. But the artist was Daniel Castro, who blew my mind.
Yeah, man.
Okay, blew my mind, and I couldn't say because I had to get home. But he became my favorite blues musician, and I would say he still is. He's a Bay Area blues musician, Telecaster player. Oh my goodness! And that's when I started. I was like, oh, the blues can be this. It's in a bar, and it's dirty, and it's rowdy, and it's so fun, and it's loud, and it's in your face, and it's good. Like, and by then I'd been playing guitar, right? I've been playing guitar, and I'm like, oh, like the musicianship can be so good, and he was having so much fun with what he was playing on the guitar. He was playing, he was like, he would tell jokes on the guitar, like good. Oh my gosh, it was so awesome. And I've seen Daniel Castro probably 15, maybe 20 times since then, Specifically, he had a double album that was called Live at the Saloon. And it literally taught me blues because until then I had never played it. I just listened to it a little bit. Yeah. And I literally learned the blues from that album and learned my licks and all that stuff. So
it's learning the vocabulary.
That's kind of how I got into it. Yeah.
You got to learn the words before you can speak the language.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think some people have are some misconceptions about the blues?
There's so many. So a lot of people's issue with the blues is they look at it as a simple style of music, and at its base, the entry point for blues is very low. But I would posit that the entry point for most styles of music that have ever been popular is pretty low. It's an easy to get into, at its basis level. And I mean, even before you get into a 12 bar, there's one chord blues out there. Look at something like Catfish Blues by Muddy Waters. You can be as simple as that, but you can take that as well. And there's jazz that has entry points that low. There's country music that has entry points that low. There's rock and roll that has entry points that low, down to one or two chords to learn a song. I mean, every guitar player at some point or another has played Smoke on the Water. So I think that misconception of it being simple music is, first of all, bogus, because all music starts out simple, and blues has its own complexities. The harmonies are a little complex sometimes. The thing that's complex about blues is a feel. There is a way of approaching notes that if you can't do it, there's an inauthenticity to it. That
definitely
it doesn't come across as blues anymore. It is something else. And you can feel it. Yeah, you absolutely can feel it. And that's the part that's the hardest to learn.
Right.
You can learn the notes, you can learn the licks, you can learn the chords, you can learn the songs. But if 100%. You can't make it feel like the blues, you're not playing the blues.
And I think that might be where people think they don't like the blues or have experienced blues that they don't like. And it's because they're experiencing blues from someone that is playing inauthentic blues. Yeah. There may be, it's very on time, or, I'm like kind of a pentatonic player, maybe it's just pentatonic, and they're not throwing in the blues notes. They're not switching modes or whatever. Those are the things that really separate great blues is when they're really telling a story. They're playing with the timing and the scales and that kind of thing. I think
it and that's, man, if you listen to and this sounds like a cop out, and I think it's a cop out when other people say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you would really deep dive, and I'm going to leave it to one artist. If you will deep dive B.B. King, listen to B.B. King, you will hear straight pentatonic licks. You'll hear outside diminished runs. You'll hear augmented runs. You're going to hear him actually playing to the changes like a jazz player would, which you don't always hear in blues as much till you get to some of the more West Coast style blues guys. The West Coast jump blues movement really introduced a lot of jazz into the blues scene. But It's really, really fascinating because B.B. King's a master class in almost every style of blues because he's played them all and he's referenced all of them in his playing. It doesn't have to be about one thing, but the one thing that's so consistent in all of his playing is a feel. When he hits a note, you know it's him. There's a tone and a feel.
One note with B.B. King.
And it didn't matter if you were listening to him back in his super reverb days or if you're listening to him in his Gibson solid state amp days. It didn't matter. Whatever you were listening to him in, you knew who that was.
You hear that vibrato, you're like, oh, that's BB.
That's it.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges with the blues, whether playing or maybe listening to or trying to tell people about the blues or finding new blues, which can be hard?
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges?
So some of the biggest challenges facing blues today is just people see it as an antiquated music. A lot of people look at... So the blues went through a really interesting trajectory. A lot of people are like, oh, did the blues create jazz or did jazz create the blues? Actually, if you really dive in, they happened concurrently in two different areas. One in New Orleans, one in the Mississippi Delta. And the reason... I'm gonna oversimplify because there's no good answer, so oversimplifying is the best way to do it. Jazz happened because of the traditional African American musics that were happening. They are mixing with Western music, and because of the surplus of musical instruments left over from the Civil War, and so they had access to them. They had all these horns, and so you got to see jazz happen out of that. Well, in the Mississippi Delta, they didn't have all that surplus of horns. There were horns. The Delta back then was not what it is now. This is actually before the Mississippi Delta actually at one point was the richest region of Mississippi. Now it's the poorest. It's an amazing shift. But instead, you had a lot of pianos and you had a lot of guitars starting to make their way into the Mississippi Delta. And so you saw styles evolve around the instruments that were available. And so the blues arose. But then, it transforms. The earliest popular blues forms of music were actually women blues singers in vaudeville acts. That was the most popular style of blues. Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, go back and listen to them. They're absolutely incredible. And then much later, actually, Big Mama Thornton sort of carried on that tradition of the big belting female blues singer. And so that was the earliest form of like popular music out of the blues. And then jazz picked it up and it moved in. So it sort of died off during the jazz and show tune era of the 30s and 40s into the 50s, which then gave way to, we all know, rock and roll in the 50s. Eric Clapton discovered, well, even pre-Eric Clapton, but Eric Clapton discovered blues music, started making rock and roll. Elvis Presley, Sun Records, all the Sun Records stuff, all of them. Then you've got... The Rolling Stones came over here. Rolling Stones didn't try to be a rock and roll act. They were trying to play American R&B and just weren't good at it. Instead, they played rock and roll. That's what their attempts became, was rock and roll. You see that a lot. A lot of people think Georgia Satellites with Change in My Pocket's a blues song. Now, that's a rock and roll song. It's a 12-bar progression. That's a rock and roll song. That's not a blues song.
Right. So it happened a lot.
Yeah. And so then you saw, and I say all this is a long way to get to this, and you'll see where I'm going in a second. Then the 60s happened, and you had this blues revival because of all the people that found blues music and brought it back into the forefront. You start to see some of these guys who had been kind of forgotten for a long time start to play festival stages again. Your Muddy Waters, your Howlin' Wolf, all those guys starting to get some notoriety again. And there was this resurgence in it, and people started to play it. And predominantly before, it had been black artists played blues, white artists played rock and roll because they didn't have the vocabulary, they didn't have the style. I'm completely oversimplifying this. I'm sure some listeners are going to say, well, what about... I know there are exceptions. There's always exceptions.
Sure.
This is gross oversimplification. But then you started to see it become a multicultural affair, playing the blues after the 60s. It really became, an American art form that started as an African American art form. Well, today, fast forward to today, there's a lot of African American youth that see the blues as their grandpa's music, as a racially divided music. They see it as something they don't want to be a part of. And so there's a stigma in that culture, at least around the artists that I know, the musicians that I know. That's how a lot of them feel about it. And a lot of them feel, hey, we've moved on. We've done this.
Right.
And so then you get a lot of people playing blues music who really love it, who are never going to quite have the authenticity that blues sort of requires. You know what I mean? It makes sense. And that's not necessarily just it's not just a race thing. And a lot of people are going to yell at me and say, you're making it a race thing. I'm not. But there's something to that. This is an African-American art form that we adopted as an American art form. We integrated it into a culture. Cue all the arguments about appropriation there. Y'all can have that somewhere else. Don't at me. There are college classes y'all can go sit in on that talk about it. But we're seeing it as old music. And today, the people that are picking it up, I say picking it up, air quotes, blues music, they're picking up a music that's actually more rock and roll than blues and still calling it blues. I'm gonna invoke Joe Bonamassa, who I have no animosity towards. I know some people do.
I don't either.
I have no issues with Joe. He's a killer guitar player. He's a lewd businessman who knows what he's doing.
Really good businessman, really smart businessman.
And he plays in the blues idiom, though I will call him a rock and roll guitarist all day long.
I would say, he's like a blues rock guitar player.
Exactly. And so people hear that and they think, this is blues. Well, no, I mean, I need you to come to Mississippi and I need you to listen to Watermelon Slim just play harmonica and sing. Or go find Bobby Rush and hear Bobby Rush and hear what he does and hear what gut bucket buckshot mud blues sounds like, where it's not loud drummer, loud guitar, loud bass, Hammond organ. It's a guy with a harmonica tapping his foot on his front porch. You know what I mean? That's still a legitimate style of blues out there. There are a lot of people still playing it, but I think the younger generation, with some exceptions, Kingfish, for example, majority of the younger generation see it as a bygone era of music, and they sort of pass it by. And I think that's the biggest challenge in blues today is getting the youth to the youths, old man yelling at clouds now. Getting the next generation to see it as more than just a dead music or a dead language. Yeah,
I'm with you. Can I ask how old you are? I feel like we're similar ages here.
I'm 41. I'll be 42 in a couple months.
We are very similar ages. I just turned 42.
Yeah,
I kind of had that vibe that we were very similar ages here, and it's hard not to feel like the old white guy playing blues.
Yeah,
right. It's super hard because I am. I'm 42 and I just want to play blues because it's so fun and I love it.
You're
so
young
much.
by blues standards, if I'm going to be honest, man. I used to play this bar in Jackson, Mississippi called F. Jones Corner. I haven't played it in a while because I haven't been gigging in a while, but the music starts at midnight and goes to 4 a.m.
Oh God, no, thank you. I would. That's no.
Well, that's the thing. So I used to play those gigs, man. I love that bar. It's a small bar, and I'd play that, and 4 a.m. start loading out gear, get paid. Get the car loaded up. By the time you're leaving the parking lot, the sun's coming up, right? Oh, and I feel like I've been hit by a truck. And I remember it wasn't the first time. It was the second time I played there. Got home and I looked at my wife and I said, I don't think I can keep doing this. I'm too old for this. And then I realized at the time, I was about half the age of the average age of the person that played that bar. I was like, oh shit. I am young by the standards of the people that play that bar.
That's so funny. That is so funny.
So if you're going to play it, you better be able to hang in there, grab hold and just go. So, but anyway, I digress. Yeah. It is to see the old, for me, I call myself white passing, cause the skin tone, but neither here nor there. It's the white guy, 40-something white guy playing the blues. And it's such a stereotype.
It is.
For a reason.
It is. But at the same time, I want to be true to myself, man. I love it. I want to play it. And, just because it's a stereotype, I don't know. It's blues is good, and I think, and part of me is like I want to honor the heritage, like you said, the history of it, but I also want I don't think that means that it should be that there should be gatekeeping behind it and say,
yes,
well, that means that only people that have that heritage should play it. I think more people should play it. I don't know what I'm trying to say. That I think more people should play the blues, so that the heritage lives on.
I had just had this conversation on my podcast with Tyler from Alder Audio. It's a microphone company. And on our Patreon episode, we got way deep in the conversation about doing what makes you happy and what you love, whether you're good at it or not, whether there's like other people's opinion of it. Now, there's a line to this, y'all. Don't break the law. Don't do anything really illegal. But,
don't do anything that would hurt your family.
Right. Don't do anything hurt your family or hurt other people.
Or maybe cost you to lose your job. But after that, when those criteria are met, then...
Yeah. Unless your job sucks, then go for it.
Okay.
But, we were talking about that, and I think it applies here, too. There's a stereotype. There's a stigma around blues, especially from other guitar players. Oh, you're just a blues guitar player. If I see one more comment on YouTube about, it'd be nice if you played something besides blues licks. Well, I don't want to play anything but blues licks. Back off.
Find another channel.
Find another channel. You sat here and watched this.
Yeah, go to Ryan's channel. He just plays surf stuff. Find a different channel, man.
Exactly. But find what makes you happy and then do it. Being happy doing something isn't prerequisited by you've got to be good at it, or you've got to fit some stereotype, or you've got to be this. If you enjoy it, and just do it. And if sitting around playing blues licks, even if it's the same like 4 blues licks over and over and over again, makes you happy, do that.
And fortunately, in the blues, you have those 12 bars. You can just play those 4 licks for like 15 hours straight. It's amazing.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, that's kind of what this whole channel is all about, is finding your thing that you enjoy, no matter what your skill level is at it, wherever your journey is on it, whether you're a beginner or, a veteran at it, that's why I'm interviewing all these people, just because, the world is a big place. There's tons of different interests, and just finding what it is that you're interested in, having fun with it. So that's kind of what the whole podcast is about. So moving on, what about the blues, whether, like I said, listening or playing or both, what about it fills your bucket? Why do you do it? Well, what fills your bucket?
So listening, it's one of those things where I really can't explain it. It's in the same way. Okay, I'm really verbose. If y'all haven't figured out, I like long.
You're very eloquent.
Yeah. you're too kind.
You're a librarian.
Yeah, it's true. My day job is
your
a librarian.
Words.
I have lots of words, and I try to use every one that I know in every answer. So, but I listen to other musics, and like people think, because I like blues, I hate metal, or I hate rap, or I hate country music. No, I actually love all those things. I do. But those styles of music, I more appreciate and listen to as an active to just listen to and appreciate. It's like, if I go to listen to metal, I'm going to pick like a handful of things that I'm going to listen to just really get that, but then I'm going to move on. If I go listen to country music, I'm going to go find like a handful of things to listen to and then move on. Like I appreciate it, and I want to have that as a cultural input into my musical lexicon, whatever. Same thing with rap, and same thing with every other style of music. Blues is a style of music that I put it on and feels like home. When you get off work and you go home.
Yeah.
And you take off your real world clothes and you put on your home clothes. Everybody does this. Let's not all act like we don't. You have that pair of pants or pajamas or that t-shirt that you feel comfortable in and you're at home in, and that you immediately do that once you get home. I do. My wife does. Blues is that feeling for me. I go back to blues because this is my natural. This is what my brain hears. This is the wavelength I'm on. This is the vibe that I get. I'm going to listen to blues music, and I should say blues tangential music. So I can throw in, blues adjacent stuff. That's what I'm going to just listen to on repeat from now until the end of time. Nice. I never get tired of hearing it. I can't wait until Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's coming up. If you're listening to this well into 2023, it is still coming up. It's just not the one I'm talking about. So the Thanksgiving's coming up, and the day after Thanksgiving is the day my wife lets me start listening to Christmas music. She does not let me listen to it before then.
Smart woman.
I have a massive blues Christmas playlist because I do not care about listening to traditional blues music.
Can you send it to me?
Christmas, yeah, I'll send it to you. Totally.
Is it like a Spotify playlist?
Yeah, it's a Spotify playlist.
Can we share it? Can we share it in the N+1 podcast Facebook group?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we share it there?
It's
Guys,
not even my private one. It's one that I found on there that was already done by somebody. So we'll share it.
Okay, first of all, I'm a person. I like Christmas, of course. Who doesn't like Christmas? You might have a different religion, and that's fine.
The holiday season.
Holiday season. I like Christmas music, but I can't stand the same old Christmas songs. Yeah. So I made my own Christmas list, Spotify Christmas list, and it's called Christmas Music I Can Tolerate.
Yes.
And there's some blues on there, you know. Yeah. I think one of them is B.B. King's "Merry Christmas Baby" or something like that.
That one's in this playlist, of course.
So send that list, and we'll add it to the Spotify to the Facebook group. Yeah,
it's a great list, but it's just indicative of who I am. I want to find. I listen to blues and bluesy jazz and some singer songwriter who has a lot of blues influence. That's that little Venn diagram of that's my home place. That's what I listen to, and it never gets old to me. And that's not some active thing. That's not something I decided. That was just what happened, and I can't tell you why. And so I don't think poorly of someone who doesn't get blues and they don't appreciate it. That's fine. That's not your wavelength. That's not your vibe. Just don't decide you hate it just because you don't like it. You can not prefer something and not hate it at the same time.
Yeah. Or just don't decide you hate it after hearing like one thing of it. You know, maybe you just don't like that artist, you know, so. Yeah.
Don't try to listen to Robert Johnson first. Don't go straight.
That's a tough listen, I would admit.
It's a tough listen. Don't go straight there.
Yeah. Okay. So this one, this is quickly becoming my favorite question. I'm going to ask. The question is: have you had any bad experiences with the blues? And I like to maybe direct this towards maybe like gigs. Have you had any bad gigs?
Oh man,
a story you can tell.
Man, yes.
Tell us a story, man. I love these questions.
Let me give you some experience about the way blues gigs work. So, we don't rehearse.
Of course, why would you?
The concept
Tell me what key we're in.
The concept of rehearsing, even when I'm throwing very non-typical songs with the guys and gals I play with, is such a massive foreign concept to them. So a lot of times it'll be, I'm going to send you a list with some notes. You've got the set list. Most of the time they don't listen to them. That's fine. So, and also I used to run a weekly blues jam at Ground Zero Blues Club in Clarksdale. Mm-hmm. And the trick to running a good jam is learning how to communicate a song that not everyone on stage knows in a way that they can play it and at least be okay. When you don't rehearse, there can be some terrible experiences. There can be some really bad experiences.
Sure.
But for the most part, they're great. So I'll give you a couple of the worst experiences with the blues. A lot of it comes from, most of it doesn't come from the players and the actual act of doing the gig. It comes from the audience. I've already told you the whole, like, drunk guys asking me to play Ballad of Curtis Lowe. I don't play Skinner. I don't. With the exception of, I've made a lot of money off of Sweet Home Alabama over the years. I made $100 in one night off Sweet Home Alabama. Just, the guy tipped us, we played 4 sets, and he tipped us $25 each set to play Sweet Home Alabama. I'm like, dude, this is your nickel. I mean, we don't normally do the human jukebox thing, but if that's what you're going to throw at us, that's what we'll do.
I had a gig once where we were like, okay, we're done. And the guy walked up and dropped in $100 and he goes, no, you're not. We're like, no, we're not.
Yeah, man. That's definitely happened a few times where you're like,
and we just
he's like, how much to keep you playing?
Yeah, just $100. No, you're not. No, we're not. We just played like 2 more songs and then left. We're like, okay.
Yeah.
We didn't play for another hour or anything. We just played like 2 more songs.
I've had some where we played a whole 5th or 6th set, depending on how much money people put in the bucket. Yeah. Oh man, you got to learn the tricks. And I'm diverting from the question for a second, but I do this thing with there are some songs that hold mystical holds over people. One of them is Brown Eyed Girl. Thankfully, I don't get that requested a lot. But the ones I do get requested a lot, Sweet Home Alabama, that one happens. And the big one, though, at blues gigs is Mustang Sally. God. So the guy who wrote Mustang Sally is from Clarksdale as well. His name is Sir Mac Rice. So I get Mustang Sally a lot. I hate that song. I do. I genuinely just hate that song. I love Wilson Pickett. He does some other really incredible songs. He has one song called Don't Let the Green Grass Fool Ya. He's got, obviously, everybody knows Engine Number 9. I do those songs, but I don't want to do Mustang Sally. Some movies have ruined that song. But people will request it. So what I do is we have, tip buckets at the front of the stage, right? And what I'll do is I'll take one of those tip buckets. I'll empty it into the other. We usually have 2. If we have 1, I'd figure something out. But I'll dip one into the other. And I'll say, all right, we'll play it, but it's going to cost you. So we're going to play another song. And while we're playing this other song, that's the Mustang Sally bucket. And when this song is over, we'll play Mustang Sally. And the quality of the version you get is directly contingent on how much money is in that bucket. I have played some really atrocious versions of Mustang Sally.
On purpose.
On purpose. Because there were like $2 in the bucket. I was like, once somebody dropped a 5, and so I sang the first verse, and we stopped dead. We never got to the Ride, Sally, Ride section where everybody could sing along and do the thing. We stopped.
That's the $5 version, folks.
Yep, that's exactly what I told them. That's the $5 version. And then you watch drunk white people stampede to the stage to put money in the bucket. I did once, only once, had someone start putting money in the other bucket to not play it.
Nice.
And
me and you, man, we're friends.
Yeah, the not play it bucket won. So, and that's not necessarily a bad story, but it's just funny story. Gig stories are always a little interesting. I've had the gigs where we had to fight to get paid. I've had the gigs where I hate those. I make a mental note never to go back to those venues.
Yeah. How do they get anybody to play there?
Man,
they're not paying folks.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how it works.
Because everybody, like in the music industry, in the music scene, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
You know how you don't say, "Hey, don't play there. They don't pay you." I mean, I live here in this little town, Tuolumne County, and I'm pretty sure I know every musician in the county. Like through church and through gigs. Like when I walk around and there's downtown when they do like an art night and there's musicians, like I pretty much know everybody. Like, oh hey, there's Larry. Hey, there's it's like, and so word gets if you're not paying people. Like that's gonna get around, man.
Yeah, a lot of those places aren't around anymore for what it's worth. Right. But yeah, it's it's a thankless gig for the most part. Occasionally you get the decent paying gig, but it's just like every other band. And it's one of those things that's weird to me when I hear Ryan talks about this kind of stuff all the time, sharing bills with multiple bands, right? No, from the time I first took up guitar, I was playing 4-hour gigs. Like, I was just grab a guitar and hold on for 4 hours. We were the only band on the bill. We're the entertainment for the night. This whole idea of 6 bands sharing a 4-hour time slot is ludicrous to me. First of all, I'm like, how did anybody make any money? I get it. It's a different vibe. It's a different scene. The DIY, original music scene. They're not trying to make money, I guess. I don't know. But blues is a little different. You're playing for one. We played one gig We played a street gig during a blues festival for 5.5 hours with one break.
Oh my gosh.
It was so rough. It was so rough. For not a lot of money.
That is rough. I was gonna say, at least did you get paid? No.
Yeah, not a lot.
Horrible.
It wasn't great. I mean, we made okay money.
Nice.
But yeah.
One question I like to ask is if you have any DIY tips or techniques as far as the blues goes that you feel like you've developed yourself, that you feel like maybe your way is better, that maybe like no one taught you, you just picked up or made up on your own. You haven't seen other people do maybe.
Huh. I don't know that I have anything that I feel like is like I figured it out, because I mean it's such a well-trodden path of the blues. It really comes down to just learning from all of those that have come before you and being willing to listen to blues players that aren't necessarily your style. Listen to horn players if you want to be a better soloist as a guitar player. I'll tell you a fun trick, actually, a playing trick. And then I'll share a couple of harmonic things to help people who maybe want to understand what the blues sounds like, that vocabulary we're talking about. One of the tricks that I learned, one of the things that happens a lot in blues playing is overplaying.
Guilty.
Yeah, a lot of people overplay. And I think I'm in tune. We'll pretend I am. Close enough for the blues anyway. One of the tricks to combating that overplaying that I learned from a much better musician than myself, when you're practicing, and you should practice at home and learn these things and get this so that you're not thinking about it at the gig anymore and you're just playing.
Right. Very important.
Only play when you're breathing out. Don't play.
Okay,
don't play when you're breathing in. So the reason is,
I've never heard this.
Singers cannot sing when they're breathing in.
Okay.
Horn players cannot play when they're breathing in. They can only play when they're breathing out. And those are the two things that most people want to sound like. They want to sound like a vocalist or a horn player when they're soloing in the blues, because you want that that vocal melodic approach. Not now if you're a Bonamassa style, no, this isn't going to work for you. That's over. His is overplaying. He's a rock and roll player playing blues. That's why he's a rock blues guy. And that's fine. But the B.B. King thing is he sounds like a singer. He plays very singable guitar lines. And you can only do that if you're playing while you're breathing out. Sync your breathing to your playing. And then don't think about it when you're actually gigging. Get that as part of how you play, as part of your style. I think that's a really helpful thing to combat that overplaying thing that we all do. I'm real bad about it. I love to overplay. I love to meedly all over the place. And another thing I'll give, a lot of blues players get wrapped up, and I think I don't have perfect pitch, so I do not know if this is actually in standard tuning. I have a lot of guitars around here in half step down. So if you have perfect pitch, this may be an A or an A flat or somewhere in between. So the idea with the blues, and it's not completely in tune, y'all just gonna have to deal with it for now. Play a lot of seventh chords. But when you're soloing over it, a lot of blues players just want to go. They just want to play that pentatonic, right? Well, even then, you add that flat 5, sharp 4, give it the blue note. That's fine. That chord has a lot of notes that you're not playing. Learn to use the extra notes, and this is something that blew my mind when it finally got shown to me. So blues very often uses a ninth chord, so I'm going to use a ninth chord as an example instead of a typical 7.
Would you mind?
Let me see if I can
move your. Okay, that works. I was going to say move the camera, but that works good.
Yeah, let's see.
There we go. Okay, cool.
So that's a ninth chord, or you can play this voicing of it, or there's however you want to play it. So now, you've got your pentatonic lick that you can always play. Add the blue note, so now you've got the flat 5 in there. Well, this chord has a major third, the pentatonic has a minor third, So now that note is fair game. So you've also got the ninth now in there. So, because you're playing a 9 chord. I missed that one. Mm-hmm. But so you've added the ninth or the second. Mm-hmm. You've got the flat 3, you've got the major 3, you've got the 4, you've got the sharp 4 or the flat 5, you've got the 5. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, you're running out of notes that you can't play. But you've also got, if you're playing the B.B. King thing, B.B. King loved to play the 6, which is a Dorian thing, over a minor blues.
Wow, amazing.
You've got every note available to you. And so it's where a lot of overplaying comes from too. Get out of that pentatonic box. But I'm going to show you where the magic in the blues is. The real voice of the blues. That was a long way to get to this. Almost every note's available to you. Here are your notes you want to avoid if you want to stay within the vocabulary of the blues. Don't play the major 7.
Okay.
Unless you're playing like major blues, like legit, like major sounding blues. Avoid the major 7 and avoid the flat 9. So if you're in A, don't play these 2. And you're fine. And of course, all rules were made to be broken, right? Here's the real sound of the blues though. And oversimplifying. So you've got a 7. The blues plays that minor 3rd. It's the dissonance of the minor 3rd over a major 3rd in when you're playing. So you're playing right, and feel free to bend that minor 3rd into a major 3rd. Yes, that's it. Right. That's your sound.
We're kind of jumping ahead to the get into it section.
Oh yeah, sorry. That's my tip though. That's my like blues tip for players. Like learn to do that. So milk. I kind of milk that.
I wanted to grab my guitar because I wanted to get into do some of this. So
in the blues, everybody's like, oh, it's simple. You just play those 5 notes over the blues. No, you can literally play almost every note over the blues somewhere in that 5-chord progression, in that 3-chord progression.
Yeah.
So, that's my tip is learn when you can use all the notes, because you can literally use all 12 that we use in Western music at some point in a simple blues progression.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not simple anymore.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm kind of like a straight blues player or a pentatonic player where I'll go, and then sometimes I'll throw I'll throw like a...
Yeah.
I'll throw that one.
So that one you throw in there...
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah.
That's the 9.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now you're just playing that 9 chord. You familiar with most people are familiar with Stormy Monday blues?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
There's that 9 chord. Really pretty 9 chord. It's more of a tip. It's maybe less of a tip, more of a don't let yourself box yourself in what you think blues is. This is where listening to those other players comes in. B.B. King uses all the notes. He uses them all. One of my favorite B.B. style licks is a turnaround that he uses where... That doesn't sound like most blues licks people are used to when they're playing the... that kind of stuff. So don't pigeonhole yourself and expand your idea of what the blues is a little bit. Because there's a lot out there. Go listen to Johnny Guitar Watson. Oh, man. And be willing to embrace the capo.
Oh, I love the capo.
Yeah, that one's...
I come from a church background,
so
capo is yeah, know your way around a capo, guys.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by my other YouTube channel called Miller's Custom Guitars. On that channel, I do videos that are all about modifications to guitars, teaching how to do setups. I explore guitar tone. I don't really do like demos. It's not really that kind of channel, but I try to teach guitar players how to get the most out of their guitars, how to understand their guitar better. And on a recent series, I'm trying to take a deep dive into the guitar tones of Brian May, and I'm having a lot of fun doing those videos. I spend a lot of time and effort trying to make those videos as high quality as I can, editing those, developing my skills and techniques as a video maker and editor. I write scripts and do a bunch of stuff. But I really appreciate it if you are interested in guitar stuff and check out some of those videos. I'll put a link in the description. You know, if you're not into guitar stuff, another great way that you could support this podcast is by taking this episode or any episode that you find interesting and picking one person, just one, I'm not asking a lot, pick one person that you think might find that episode interesting and sharing it with them to help grow the show. We're trying to get this podcast off the ground, and I'm having so much fun making these podcasts, and we would just like to get our legs under us and get a listener base established, people that are enjoying the show. And if you know of someone who you think might enjoy listening to these conversations, whether it's with Jed talking about photography, or John talking about acting, or with Gabe talking about how we drank some scotch, or Josh how we prospected for gold using moss, or like this conversation with Phil talking about the blues. If you think someone might find these conversations interesting, why don't you pick an episode and share it with one person? I'd really appreciate that. Anyway, we'll get you back to the show. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll get back over to Phil. Thanks, guys.
Do you have any, in the blues, do you have any guilty pleasures? Like, we were just talking about how it's okay to like whatever you like, but sometimes people get a little judgy.
Yeah, I don't believe in the term guilty pleasure. I used to claim I had guilty pleasures. You like what you like and stop feeling guilty about it. Like, there's nothing guilty about it to like what you like. I get like super passionate about this roots music, about this people music, I like to call it, blues. And then also I unabashedly love Taylor Swift. I don't care.
She's good. She's very talented.
I love early Avril Lavigne. I was really into those first couple of albums of Avril Lavigne. This is another weird playlist that I have on Spotify. I have a sea shanty playlist. I love sea shanties. I gave up on the idea of guilty pleasures a long time ago. Oh, metal guys get mad at me when I tell them I love Dragon Force. I adore Dragon Force. So like in blues, I don't have any. Like, because I listen to what I like. If I don't like it, I don't listen to it, and that's fine. Right. It's not that I think it's bad. Obviously, someone's listening to it, and someone likes this music. So stop feeling bad about what you listen to, and just listen to it.
Yeah. I mean, someone liked it enough to make it in the first place.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Right. Like, do them a favor and listen to their music.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so in your time listening to blues, playing the blues, do you have like one favorite or best moment? Maybe it was like a really amazing concert you went to, or maybe it was an amazing like gig you played, like in front of, I don't know, like a bunch of people or with some amazing people. Does something come to mind as like maybe a crowning achievement or something like that?
Oh man. There's been a few, some things that I'm really proud of, some things I've done, some people I've gotten to play with. I've got to open for BB King a couple of times. That was pretty
No
amazing.
way.
Yeah. He has
That's awesome.
He has a homecoming festival in Indianola, Mississippi, or had when he was
Rest
still
in
with
peace,
us.
man.
He so we got to open for him a couple of
that's
times.
awesome.
That was really rad. I got
Oh
to
my gosh.
because I played at Ground Zero and a lot of people came through. I've gotten to play with some really incredible musicians over the years. I got to play with Hubert Sumlin. I got to play with Pinetop Perkins. I've gotten to play with Ike Turner Jr. A couple of times. Obviously Kingfish. I've played with Kingfish a bunch because that he's my guy. That's my dude. Absolutely.
You're
Every day,
jumping
twice
ahead
on
in the
Sunday.
podcast, man.
Oh well, these are also my these are it. I'm jumping ahead to the name
For
dropping.
the listeners and not the viewers, I just showed the name drop card. But
Yeah.
we're gonna get to one in a minute. But
Yeah. So, but those are kind of sort of the pinnacle. This is a weird one. Then, if we're gonna say things I'm like really really proud of, it's that like just being accepted as authentic in that space really felt really validating to me. I've been, accepted inside of that blues sphere. I've played with a lot of guys who call me one of them, even though I still feel like an outsider and an imposter all the time. I remember and sorry, gonna name drop one more again. Just a few weeks ago, I got to see Bobby Rush again because of a thing I was doing. And we got him to come be a keynote speaker for this event we were having. And I walked up to him, and I have not seen that man in over 10 years since I ran sound for him. Mm-hmm. And he has heard me play. And I went to reintroduce myself to him, and he recognized and remembered me.
amazing.
And like just the fact that he literally embraced me, gave me a giant big old bear hug, and remembered me as a blues guitarist and a guy who he knew in that sphere.
Oh, that's cool. I feel like personally, I'm so forgettable. Like I feel like every time I meet anybody, I'm like, yeah, I'm Adam. Like a person who does things. And so like I don't know.
I also feel forgettable. That's imposter syndrome speaking.
I know. Yeah, I know it is. But yeah, it's like anyway. So yeah, I totally get it. But that's amazing. Those are some great moments. So so you gave us some really good pointers on the guitar. But like let's say if someone maybe they've been playing guitar for a while, maybe for a long time, but they say, "Hey, I want to get into playing the blues." Actually, I want you to give us two recommendations.
Okay.
I want you to give us a recommendation. If someone wants to start playing the blues, okay, give us one recommendation for that. Where should they start? Yeah. And also give us one recommendation for someone says, "Hey, I've never listened to the blues.
Yeah.
What's the first thing I should listen to?" Give us one each.
Okay. To start playing the blues. So if you're going to just start playing the blues, you got to go, and this is a little controversial, and so I apologize. Go listen to those early, like the post Cream, post Blind Faith albums, like the first Eric Clapton solo records. Go listen to those and learn to play those licks, because as much as polarizing as my opinion of Clapton is, I'm not a massive fan. I really love his albums he did with the Yardbirds and with Cream and with Blind Faith and Derek and the Dominoes. I love that stuff. But the stuff that he started doing solo got just a little bland. It just seemed like it lost the fire. It lost any real energy. But what it does have is a very rich vocabulary of blues guitar licks that are approachable and that you can really dive into and steal. Just steal them. Just go listen to those licks and try to learn to play those songs, because he plays in those records, and this is me just being real, he plays some watered down versions of some blues classics on those records.
Okay.
And they make them much more approachable for the beginning guitarist to start to learn, rather than listening to the original records where maybe those guitar players weren't exactly in time, or maybe they weren't precisely in tune, and it gets harder to hear what they're doing because their rhythm is very much their own. Their tuning is very much their own sometimes. I'm looking at those early Robert Johnson records especially. Don't jump in and try to learn Robert Johnson. You would think, oh, it's just an acoustic guitar and a singer. It'll be easy. It is not. It is not. There are nuances to his playing that require you to be at a higher level than just getting into the blues. Start with those early Eric Clapton records because they're watered down versions. They're the Mel Bay versions of those songs.
He plays like a technically better, like more in tune, more in time versions of some of those classic songs, and it's arguably not as good.
Yes.
But that makes it better for learning the blues.
Exactly. I think
That's
absolutely
awesome.
that's a great starting part for someone who wants to start learning the blues, and then branch out from there once you get some of the vocabulary under your feet.
I'm sure you just made some enemies because I'm sure some people love those albums.
You know what? If you do, there are no guilty pleasures. My opinion does not invalidate yours.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel about it.
Don't at me, bro.
Yeah, don't at me. But now, as for starting to listen, it's the same album every time. Go listen to Albert King's Born Under a Bad Sign. That album is a tour de force. It's
good.
Great guitar tone, great singing, great songwriting, great vibe, and it's approachable. It's not those early country blues guitars. Now, if you're already a blues listener and you want to get deeper in, like, oh yeah, I've listened to Albert King and B.B. King, and I've listened to Freddie King, and I've listened to Howlin' Wolf, and I've listened to Muddy Waters, and I've listened to John Lee Hooker. I'm in that. Okay, you want to go deeper? Go listen to Blind Lemon Jefferson. Go listen to Mississippi Fred McDowell. Go listen to those guys and get your mind blown all over again. Especially, I recently did a deep dive where I went into blues artists that I've sort of skipped. And one of those, I did this late last year, earlier this year. I did it with Blind Lemon Jefferson. I started listening to his records, and I was like, holy shit. I know all of these songs because other people have covered them, and these are so much better than the covers of them. I had no idea how important Blind Lemon Jefferson was until I started listening, and it rocked my world, a world that has spent 30 years in blues music almost at this point.
You never even knew. That's amazing.
I had no idea.
That's awesome. I'll just recommend also people. I've always been a huge fan of Albert Collins. To give me a telly, like any day for the blues, man. That comes from my Daniel Castro roots. Give me a guy playing a telly, it always blew my mind. He's playing a telly, and he's capoing it way up, like on the 7th fret.
Yep.
And why does this work? And it just does. Like, listen to Albert Collins, man.
Yeah, Johnny Guitar Watson would do that too. He'd capo way, way up. If you want to hear some blues that sounds a little different than you're used to hearing, go listen to Big Joe Williams. Big Joe Williams played a 9-string guitar. It's a 12-string, except the E, A, and D, the 3 lowest strings, were just 1 string. So it's one string, then double string, like double course, like the 12-string. Had a great sound to it.
Oh, that's rad. That's cool, man. Okay, so we're going to wrap up here and get towards the end. What is, for you, N+1, and maybe new musicians that are down the pipeline that you're just getting into, or maybe if you have any gigs that you're working on, or band projects, or I don't know. What's coming down the pipeline for you? What's on the horizon?
Well, I'll tell you what, I held back earlier when you showed me that I jumped the gun on name drop. I was going to I saved a name drop.
I have a name drop section coming up, but
is that still after this? Okay,
yeah, it's after this.
I'll save it then. I'm saving it then. N+1 for me is actually just getting back out and gigging. I've just gone through a pretty stressful professional period for this year. I had a lot of responsibilities that aren't permanent. They're like temporary responsibilities I had to take on, like planning a conference and doing some other things. And now that those are behind me, I'm able to start focusing. So the hope is I'm still writing. I'm trying to finish at least an EP, and I want to get back out there gigging. I want to get to where I'm at least playing, 3 or 4 times a month is the plan.
Man, that's a lot. Yeah,
it's a lot, but that's where my happy place is. That's where I'm mentally in a better place when I'm gigging that often. And
Nice.
I'm on stage with musicians making music. Whether it's my music or somebody else's music or a cover gig, doesn't matter. I just need to be on stage making music.
Yeah, for me, I take almost no joy playing music by myself. You know, for me, the juice is all playing music with other people.
Yep.
That's it. So, so every once in a while, I get all riled up and I call up my friends. I got to play music. Let's figure something out. And
well, that's the only place you get better too. So I just listened to a podcast with Corey Wong and Chris Thiele, and Chris Thiele got to talking about
amazing.
Yeah, and they got to talking about the whole psychology of playing in an ensemble. And something Chris said really resonates with me, and I'm not going to get it verbatim because I need to go back and listen to that podcast again because there's a lot to digest. But essentially, he was like, if you're a musician just sitting around playing with yourself, you're never going to introduce new ideas into what you're doing. You're just not.
You can only have your own ideas.
Exactly. Right. You're never going to flourish. You're never going to expand what you do because you're only getting input from yourself. Right. So it's playing with other people. And that applies to writing with other people or, just having conversations with other people and talking about, and if you want to do the conversation route, having tough conversations. You're never going to expand the way you think of things if you only have your own ideas and never listen and converse with other ideas musically, personally, spiritually, emotionally, all those things.
Nice. Okay, we're gonna wrap up at the very end. I got 2 silly questions at the end, and I've given you a name drop card a couple times, but I want you to give us a sentence or two and casually name drop the name of the most famous person you've ever met.
Okay. Oh man, that's tough. I worked for Morgan Freeman, so
he's pretty famous.
He's pretty famous.
You worked for Morgan Freeman.
Yeah. So I used to be the assistant manager. I was the assistant manager and audio engineer for Ground Zero Blues Club in Clarksdale, and Morgan Freeman's a co-owner of the Blues Club. So that's a tough one. So I won't mention that one because I did work for Morgan. Oh, there's a bunch of good ones because I once took I was responsible for taking the snacks to a poker game that involved both Morgan Freeman and Willie Nelson once.
Okay, Willie's pretty famous.
Yeah. I met Elvis Costello in Clarksdale once.
That's amazing.
He was recording songs for an album there with Jimbo Mathis from the Squirrel Nut Zippers, who has lived in Clarksdale for a long time. Okay, my favorite famous person, like super famous person story. Favorite one. So I'm playing Ground Zero on a Wednesday night, because it wasn't a jam. It was a Wednesday night, like, middle of winter. Nobody's in town. So the bar is almost empty. There's like 6 people sitting at a table in the middle of the bar, right? Okay. And I got lights in my eyes. You can't really see out in the stage that much. And we were just doing blues cover gig, 3-hour blues cover gig on a Wednesday night. And so we start playing because that's the job. So we're playing. We decide, just as you should, play the gig. Play it as hard as you would, whether it was a packed house or not. Yes, the energy is going to be different. Still give it everything you've got. Because honestly, that paid practice is worth way more than you're getting paid.
Sure.
But so we're playing best we can.
That's all I love it. Yeah.
And at near the end of the first set, a woman who's from Clarksdale, she used to be the editor at the paper. I call her Clarksdale matriarch because she's like the familial Clarksdale woman, right? She knows everything. She does everything. Her hands in everything. She walks up to the front of the stage. And she says, hey, the guy I'm sitting with wants to buy you a beer and sit and talk with you on your break. I was like, okay, awesome. I'll sit and talk with anybody who wants to buy me a beer, right? So I finish the set, start walking to the bar to get a beer, and the sound guy walks up to me and says, hey, man, is it nerve-wracking? I said, what? He said, playing in front of Robert Plant? I said, it wasn't. So long story short, yeah.
It wasn't until now.
Yeah, Robert Plant bought me a beer. And sat and we talked music for like 40 minutes because my break got to be long because they were the only people in the bar. And if they wanted to talk to me, by God, I'm going to sit and talk to Robert Plant. And yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
We talked music and guitars, and his nephew was with him at the time, who's a keyboard player, was playing keys for him. I think I still have his nephew's business card around here somewhere. He gave it to me. But we got to talking, and just before I got up to go back on stage, he looked at me and said, hey, man, you're a really great guitar player. I was like, oh my God. I can die. I'm done. Yeah. Robert Plant called me a great guitar player.
Okay, there's your name drop card. You get like 5 of them for this episode. Okay, and this is the last question, and we'll get out of here. This is honestly it morphed into the whole reason why I do the entire podcast.
Sure.
Because it's my favorite question, which is, what is your favorite all-time cartoon theme song?
Oh, DuckTales.
Woo!
Yeah, man, I freaking love that thing. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a tough battle between DuckTales and Darkwing Duck. But oh my God, DuckTales
is dangerous, man.
Oh man, hold on. I mean, DuckTales.
Nice. It's a duck blur.
Anyway,
Nice.
I used to have an acoustic
DuckTales.
arrangement. It's such a great theme song, man.
That's the 3rd DuckTales we've got so far.
Is it really?
Yeah.
It's such a great song.
8 episodes in or whatever. Yeah, DuckTales. Woo. Yep. Yeah. We've had a SpongeBob. We've had SpongeBob's pretty good. We've had a Phineas and Ferb. We had one person said Animaniacs, but then also wanted to say Pinky and the Brain. I'm like, you can't give 2 answers, man. Just pick one.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's just like I have 2 that battle, but it's DuckTales. It's definitely DuckTales.
DuckTales. Woo. Yep.
Yeah. It's such a great song.
Hey, Phil, thank you so much. This has been a great discussion. Man, I really do love the blues, and I can tell you do also.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Where can people find you? I know you're on the TikToks, you're on the Instas. You have a great podcast. Where can people find you?
Okay, so the podcast can be found anywhere you listen to podcasts. So YouTube, they're going back up on YouTube. I had thought about stopping doing the YouTube thing, but I have a new vision for my YouTube channel. So there's going to be some new video content coming up soon. That's not just the podcast, and not just demos either. Demos are fine. I'll probably keep doing a couple here and there, but I want to do some deeper dive on some subjects on my podcast, on my YouTube channel. But you can also find me Instagram at 40 Watt Podcast. That's 40 Watt WATT podcast.
Not 4 and then the letter D like WD-40. 40.
Yeah, no, and not the spelled out 40. It's 40 WATT. I also recently registered it spelled out because I was like, dang it. There's somebody's going to think I mean that too. So I need to redirect it. But the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I don't do much on Twitter. I'm trying to pick it up though.
Yeah.
TikTok, I'm going to try to get back on there. YouTube, I'm on all the things, man.
I really enjoy your TikToks. You're always asking great questions for stitches and stuff. I always try to stitch one in there. But, and I'll just say, despite what we talked about today, his podcast isn't all about the blues. He just has great guests on to talk about music and guitar life and all that stuff. But I just say, like, he almost always will slip. He just always slips something in about the blues. I just noticed that, and that's why when he said, "What should we talk about?" I'm like, "Hey, man, I just want to talk about the blues. That sounds like fun."
It's impossible to escape the things you're passionate about, so they always creep back up.
I have found that to be true.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you follow Phil on one of his platforms. Check out his podcast. It's definitely worth a listen. I've been enjoying it. I was so jealous. I was looking through some of your guests, and you had Joey Landreth on.
Yeah.
And he's probably my favorite musician.
Yeah, he's
and
one
not
of
only
my...
that, but you met him. And you've
Joey's become.
He's so good.
I'm absolutely blessed that Joey has become a friend, someone that I can just text and ask questions, and we have conversations. And he's been really great. He played in Nashville earlier this year, and we hung out after the gig for a little while. And
oh my gosh,
he's super genuine, super nice. Actually, we're going to do another episode soon. We haven't been able to schedule it because he's been really busy with touring. So we're going to get together and record another episode.
You've had some amazing guests. You had Joey Landreth, and check out Brothers Landreth. Check out Joey Landreth. His music is the best. But anyway, check out 40 Watt Podcast. And until next time, make sure you give this podcast a like, a share, give it a review. Find one person to send this to that likes the blues or maybe would be interested in the blues. Grow the show, guys. We really appreciate it. And until next time, don't be a jerk. Thank you so much.